All right. Good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. Happy Friday to you. It's end of the week. Thank God it's Friday. This is your weekly call-in town hall and radio show, and I'm going to be on the air for the next hour to answer your questions as I am each Friday. You can tune in and listen, or you can call in. I'd love to get your thoughts. The number here is 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. I can't believe I've been on the air for 2.5 years, having these weekly town halls, even during session this past year. And, we're in the process right now of, once the election is over on November the 6th, we will start launching the legislation that I am filing. We'll be doing press releases, and I'm going to let you all be the first to hear the legislation that we're going to be working on this coming session. We're going to get your input on it. Most of the legislation that I put forward each year are actually ideas from real-life constituents. What about that? So before I get going too much longer, we're going to be talking a lot about elections. We're going to talk about the election coming up on Tuesday, November the 6th. We're going to make sure that you're prepared for Election Day and have your picture ID, and we're going to go in the details of what kind of picture ID you need and all that on the show. So if you're thinking, I'm going to be absent on Election Day, or what happens if you have that business meeting where you have to go out of town at the last minute and it's past the deadline. I'm going to go into all those exact details of how you can vote on Election Day. We're going to be talking about that quite a bit today. We have a number of things that we could talk about if we get through Election Day information. We could talk about conforming. I know this is not as exciting as that, but it has to do with taxes, which we're all going to have to pay next year. And currently, because we've had some changes with the federal tax code, the big question this session is going to be, should the state conform our state tax code to the U.S. tax code? Normally we do. That's something normally that the General Assembly does every year, right at the beginning of the year, so the accountants know what to do. And so, it's going to be a bigger deal this year, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So many issues coming up that we can talk about. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And again, the number here is 804-454-1366 if you want to call in. But let's start with Tuesday. The first Tuesday in November is Election Day in Virginia. Did you know that we have an election every year in Virginia? We are the luckiest state in the U.S. that we always have an election. And you think, boy, we just did this. Well, that's right. We did just do this. And now, coming up Tuesday, November the 6th, and I know that all of you all are probably as tired as I am of all the commercials back and forth, especially in the 7th Congressional District with my good friend Congressman Dave Bratt and his opponent, Democrat Abigail Spanberger. I like Dave's ads better. They're doing much better. Had some discussions with them, and I think he's doing great. Right now, I was talking to Congressman Bratt last night, and he's up 4 points. So get your folks out there. It's going to be a tight race, a close race. Every vote is going to count. The polls are open from 6 a.m. in the morning to 7 p.m. I would say go ahead and vote before you go to work because you never know what's going to happen. You just never know. A kid could get sick or you just never know. Things happen, right? But what I want you to know that as long as you are in line by 7 p.m., you'll be able to vote. So hopefully you get in there and you vote first thing. But if something happens and you have to vote in the evening on your way home from work, and as long as you're in line by 7 p.m., you'll be able to vote. And because this is a general election, you're going to vote at your regular polling location, and we're going to talk in a minute about where you can go to find that. But make sure you bring your photo ID, because in Virginia, we have a law where when you vote in person, you show your government-issued ID, and we'll talk about the IDs that are acceptable in a little bit. We'll even talk about how you can actually vote in person at your registrar's office if you want to. I know it's very gratifying to me to be able to in-person vote, whether it's on Election Day or if you have to vote absentee. to actually go into the polling location. Let's say you're going to be absent and you think, well, I really don't want to mail anything and I want to really make sure my vote makes it in there. You can actually go between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. You can actually go into the Chesterfield County Registrar's office, and you can even go on. They have Saturday hours, and I believe that starts this week, but we'll look at that in a minute. And so you can go to the Chesterfield Registrar's office, and you can say, look, I'm not going to be here. We're going to go over the reasons. Let's say you're going to be out of town. Let's say you have to work out of town that day, or let's say you're going to be traveling between travel time and your work time. Let's say you're a first responder or you work in a hospital and you have 12-hour shifts. You qualify to vote absentee, so you want to do that. The Chesterfield, if you live in Chesterfield, the registrar's office is located at 9848 Laurie Road, and that's off of Iron Bridge Road near the county administrator's building. And the regular hours for the registrar's office are Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5 p.m. You can go in there and vote in person. Bring your ID. Tell them, they'll fill out a form where you put your excuse down. Why is it you feel like you should vote absentee? We're going to talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about what you're going to see on the ballot. Well, for one, thank God there's no referendums or no complicated language, no constitutional amendments that you have to read or understand this year. We have several offices up for election. So you have the U.S. Senate race, which is Republican Corey Stewart versus Democrat Tim Kaine, and then you have the Libertarian candidate Matt Waters. So those are your choices for U.S. Senate, not state Senate. I'm up next year, not this year. And then we have the U.S. House of Representatives, and in Chesterfield, we have the 4th Congressional District and the 7th Congressional Districts. And so that's going to be Republican incumbent Republican Dave Bratt, Congressman Bratt, and his Democrat opponent, Abigail Spanberger. And you have to be under a rock not to know who's running in that race, right? And there's also a Libertarian, Joseph Walton, who is running in that race. And so that's going to be, everybody's watching that race. It's one of the top watched races in the country, and was with Congressman Bratt last night at a deer hunters event with Corey Stewart as well. Corey was there as well. It was great to see him. And John Childrey, who I sat beside at the deer hunters event. And it was great seeing so many folks there decked out in their camouflage. And and then let's talk about the 4th Congressional District. We have Ryan McAdams, who is the Republican nominee. We have Donald McEachin, who's the incumbent, and the Democrat that's running in that race. And then you also have a Libertarian, Pete Wells. So in each of those races, you have 3 choices on there. And I don't know of a single U.S. Senate or House race where an independent has won. Now, you can call in and correct me. I'm fine. I haven't really, I don't think in Virginia we've ever had an independent to win those. So just for your information. I know in Chesterfield we have the Chesterfield Commonwealth's attorney race, Republican nominee John Childrey and Scott Miles, who's the Democrat in that race, are both vying for Billy Davenport's seat. If you remember correctly, Billy Davenport has been Chesterfield's Commonwealth's attorney for the past 30 years, and I think has done a great job. And John Childrey, if elected, would continue Billy Davenport's accomplishments, I feel. One thing that I want to call your attention to is if you live in Precinct 202 in Chesterfield, which is the Beulah precinct, the voters, your polling location has changed. The old polling location is Beulah Elementary School on Beulah Road. That has changed, and you're going to be voting at St. Augustine's Catholic Church, which is also on Beulah Road. Now, there are a number of different ways that you can vote. You can vote absentee by mail. You can vote absentee in person. And there's actually a federal postcard application for military and overseas voters. So we have that as well. If you vote in person, and most Virginians vote in person, you're going to vote at your designated polling place. And your polling place is determined by your home address, and you can look that up if you don't already know it at the State Board of Elections website. And I'm going to have that for you when we come back from the break here in a minute. But the polls in the Commonwealth of Virginia, again, they open from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m. on Election Day, and it's best to arrive early. But as long as you're in line, again, by 7 p.m., you're going to be allowed to vote. For your vote to count, though, you need to be at the correct polling location. We're going to make sure that happens because you're going to be prepared after today's session. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. All right, welcome back to more Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase. I'm your weekly call-in town hall, and I guess you could call this a radio show. I don't think it's a show, but anyway, I'm doing a special town hall today on any of your election questions you may have. I actually am a member and sit on the Senate Privileges and Elections Committee, and so anything election-wise, feel free to call in today, and I'll try to answer your question. Here in the studio, the number here is 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366, and I'm sure you have not, if you've turned on your TV, you know there's an election coming soon. And the date is Tuesday, November the 6th, so that's just less than 13 days away. So you want to prepare for that. And if, for some reason, you are going to be absent on Election Day, you have until this coming Tuesday, October the 30th. That is the deadline to request an absentee ballot be mailed to you. The deadline to request an absentee ballot to be mailed to you is Tuesday, October the 30th. And your request must be received by your registrar, which is your county registrar, by 5 p.m. And if you want to vote in person, like we were talking about earlier, Saturday, November the 3rd, the Saturday before Election Day, is the deadline to vote an absentee ballot in person. So that's another very important date. And then, of course, the big day is Tuesday, November the 6th, and the polls are open from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m. So as we were saying, there are basically three main ways you can vote. You can vote in person, you can vote by mail, or if you are overseas, there's a special federal postcard application. So let's talk about that real quick. In Virginia, if you're an active duty uniformed service voter, and that includes the qualifying spouses and dependents, and the voters are living overseas temporarily, they may register to vote or update their voter registration by mail until the 7th day before the election by 5 p.m. for the next election, which is November the 6th. Okay, so do the math there. 7 days is going to be coming up soon, October the 31st. So if you're active duty uniformed service voters, including qualified spouse and dependents, and voters living overseas temporarily may also register to vote or update their voter registration in person up to and including Election Day in their local general registrar's office. And, you know, that is unique to our military and overseas voters because it's actually now past the registration day for the rest of us, and that's because they are military and overseas. So that covers that. Now, if you're going to apply online for a Virginia absentee ballot, you can actually get a paper absentee ballot form online. You can actually, in fact, I would just recommend doing a Google search for Virginia State Board of Elections, and it will take you right there. Just type in vote absentee. It'll take you right there. So military and overseas voters can find specific information regarding absentee voting, and they have a specific military and overseas page. After applying, you can actually check to see if your absentee application was received and your ballot sent or received by going to their citizen portal. For those submitting an application to vote using an absentee ballot prior to September the 21st, your ballot will be mailed on or after September the 21st, and military and overseas citizens will have their ballots mailed or emailed on or after September the 21st. Okay, so I always try to make sure I cover military folks. Let's talk about mail. That's how you apply to vote absentee. Let's say you want to apply in person. First of all, before you visit your local registrar's office, you want to check your registration status, or you can call your registrar's office, and their phone number is available on Virginia voter registration application. Also, you can review the application to ensure you have all the information necessary to complete the process. If you are not already registered, you have to wait 5 days. 5 days after registration before you can be issued an absentee ballot, unless you're a military and overseas voter. That's the only exception. If you have a Virginia DMV license or an ID card, you can actually register online using the OAB application. Within 45 days prior to the election in which you wish to vote, I can't say that. You can apply in person within 45 days prior to the election in which you wish to vote. Visit your local registrar's office to vote absentee in person. Now, when you get to the registrar's office, you're going to fill out, yes, a form, an absentee application, and you must show an acceptable form of or photo identification. We're going to talk to you about the acceptable list of IDs. It's also listed on the voting in person page. Once again, if you go to the State Board of Elections website, once you completed the application, you will be allowed to vote absentee in person there at the registrar's office using a voting machine in the registrar's office. And accessible equipment and or curbside voting is available upon request. I know that those who are sight impaired, they actually have a special machine for those who would like to cast a vote in person. Okay, so that's the second way, applying in person. Apply by mail, fax, or email. Yes, you can actually apply by mail. You can fax it. You can email it. There is an absentee ballot application form, once again, on the State Board of Election website. And then what you do is you return the completed and signed form to your local registrar's office by mail. It can be faxed or scanned. You can scan the attachment to an email and then contact the information for your local registrar's office. You can go to online lookup tool. And once again, I'm going to say this a lot during the show because I know you're probably driving, but it's the State Board of Elections website. After the registrar processes your application, you will receive your ballot in the mail. And you want to make sure you carefully review the instructions to complete and return your ballot to your local registrar, and it has to be in by 7 p.m. on election day. So if you have a Virginia DMV license or ID card, you can register online using their OAB application. First-time voters who registered by mail may vote absentee by mail only if they have certain reason codes or the voter is 65 or older and qualifies under another reason. And those are listed once again on the website. Just do a Google search for Virginia Department of Elections. Now we're going to talk about completing an absentee ballot application. You're going to complete it. You can complete it in person up to 3 days before the election in which you wish to vote. And you complete it in the office of the local registrar. So keep that in mind, up to 3 days before the election. And you're going to sign the application. You'll sign it in the presence of a registrar or the secretary of the electoral board. And in some larger localities like Chesterfield, for instance, they offer there's actually only one registrar office in Chesterfield County, but some of the locations have satellite locations for in-person absentee voting. You just need to check with your local registrar for locations and times. All right, so an applicant generally cannot both register to vote in person and vote absentee in person at the same time. Now remember, it's too late to register to vote at this point unless you are overseas or military. Your absentee ballot cannot be issued until 5 days after you're registered. So you register. If this is your first time voting, then 5 days later you can vote. So the only exception, again, is absentee military and overseas voters eligible under a federal law. Registered voters who vote absentee in person are subject to the same rules that apply to voting in the polls. Now, when we come back, I know this is a little bit tedious, but I know that you all have some questions out there, and you can call in. We're going to be back until the top of the hour, so stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. All right, welcome back to more Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase. And the number here in the studio is 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. What questions do you have about Election Day? Some people say, what do I do if I've moved since the last time I voted? Now, if you've moved from another state, you're going to have to complete a Virginia voter registration application. You may only be registered to vote in one state. So at this point, the voter registration date has already passed. That was back in October. Let's say you've moved within the state, okay? If you've moved within the state, you will need to update your voter record, and you can do so online, or your local general registrar can do that for you. If your move occurred since the last November election, you may return to and vote at your previous polling location. And I know a lot of people say this a lot. They're like, oh, I just moved, and maybe you just moved like 2 neighborhoods over, and you forgot to change your polling location. You can actually go back to where you voted last year and vote. But you can only be registered in one place. Remember that all voters must update their records to reflect current residence because eligibility to vote requires residence in the precinct assigned based on your residence. I'm going to repeat the website where you can go for any questions you have about Election Day. It's www.elections.virginia.gov. And I know that many of you are driving, so just do a Google search for the Virginia Department of Elections, and you can enter in your address, and the system will show you your polling location. And I was pulling it up earlier today just to see how it kind of worked, and it actually gives you directions to your polling location. Anyway, we're talking about voting absentee, and I'm just going to repeat the dates. So this coming Tuesday, October the 30th, just as a reminder, is the deadline to request an absentee ballot be mailed to you. The deadline to request an absentee ballot is Tuesday, October the 30th, and the registrar must receive it by 5 p.m. Remember, if for some reason you miss it this Tuesday, you can still vote in person absentee. Remember, they're just trying to make sure they have plenty of time to get your ballot in because it does have to take into account the mail time. But if you vote absentee in person, you eliminate that time for the mail, and you can actually do that. You can actually vote in person. Now, we were talking about the hours on Election Day, November the 6th, Tuesday, November the 6th, 13 days away from now, not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday. You can vote at your regular polling location. And some people, let's say, we're talking about acceptable forms of identification. Those are going to include your Virginia driver's license, your Virginia DMV issued photo ID. In case you don't have a driver's license, you can actually get a DMV issued photo ID. What if you have a United States passport? Yep, that works. What about an employer issued photo ID? That works. You can also use a student photo ID issued by a school, college, or university located in Virginia. You can also use a U.S. or Virginia government-issued photo ID card. Another acceptable form of valid identification for Election Day is a Virginia voter photo ID card, and I'll tell you how you can get that here in a little bit. You can also use a tribal enrollment or other tribal photo identification. So photo IDs can even be used up to 1 year after the ID has been expired. A lot of people don't know that. But you do need to show one acceptable photo identification card whenever you vote in person, and this is Virginia law for all voters. And as we've said, there are many types of photo IDs which are acceptable for voting in Virginia, and you only need to show one acceptable photo ID. Did you know that if you don't have an ID, you can simply go to your nearest voter registration office and you can get a free voter photo ID even on Election Day? You will be required to complete a photo ID application, have your photo taken, and sign a digital signature pad. And the Virginia voter photo ID card is valid for voting purposes only, obviously. And let's say, what happens if you forget your photo ID on Election Day? Let's say for some reason something happens to your purse, you lose it, or I don't know, things happen. If you get to your polling place without acceptable photo ID, you can cast something called a provisional ballot. It's called a provisional ballot, and you will be given instructions on what to do so you can vote, so your vote can count. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the deadline, remember, to register to vote was Monday, October the 15th for the general election, and so it's too late to register to vote. But you can still vote absentee. And let's see, I've got some information on the provisional ballot. So a voter who arrives at the polling place without an acceptable form of photo identification is given the opportunity to vote something called a provisional ballot. You may not be as familiar with this. After completing the provisional ballot, the individual voting will be given written instructions from the election officials on how to submit a copy of his or her identification so that his or her vote can be counted. And actually, a voter will have until noon on the Friday following the election to deliver a copy of their identification to the local electoral board. Voters may submit a copy of their ID via fax, email, in-person submission, or through the Postal Service. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Election Day information you need for Tuesday, November the 6th. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with more Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase. And today we have a special segment on Election Day preparedness, making sure that whenever you go to the Election Day on Tuesday, November the 6th, that your vote has been cast either by absentee in person, absentee by mail, or fax, or in person. We want to make sure that your vote counts. And so one of the things we're going to talk about next is what is considered an acceptable reason for voting absentee. Well, for one, let's say you're a student that's attending a college or university outside of your locality of residence in Virginia. Or you're the spouse of a student attending a college or university outside the locality of a residence in Virginia. That is an acceptable reason to vote absentee. Let's say that you have business outside of the city or county of residence on Election Day. Let's say you have to go work or meet with a client that's in another city, and so you're not going to be able to come back to vote in time. So you qualify to vote absentee. Also, if you're on vacation or even personal business or vacation outside the county or city of residence on Election Day counts as an acceptable reason to vote absentee. Another acceptable reason to vote absentee is if you're working and commuting to or from home for 11 or more hours between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Election Day. And I'm thinking of my sister-in-law who she's a nurse and she works long 12-hour shifts. This would be applicable for a lot of our nurses and doctors who work, our EMTs who work those long shifts. You qualify to vote absentee for Election Day. First responders qualify. If you're a member of law enforcement, you're a firefighter, emergency technician, or search and rescue, you qualify to vote absentee. If you have a disability or an illness, also if you're the primary and if you're primarily and personally responsible for the care of a disabled, ill family member that's confined at home, you qualify to vote absentee. If you're pregnant and your pregnancy is a reason that you can vote absentee. If you're confined awaiting trial, if you're confined and convicted of a misdemeanor, if you're an electoral board member, registrar, officer of election, or custodian of voting equipment, a lot of times they have to travel to another precinct, and those folks who work on Election Day may not work their precinct, so they're allowed to vote absentee in time. If you have a religious obligation, you may vote absentee. And we've already talked about those who are active duty merchant marine or armed forces, or if you're the spouse or dependent living with a member of an active duty merchant marine or armed forces. If you're temporarily residing outside of the United States, you can qualify to vote absentee. Same with your spouse. If you're requesting a ballot for let's see, if you're an authorized representative of a candidate or a party serving inside the polling place, you can actually vote absentee. If you're granted a protective order issued by or under the authority of a court of competent jurisdiction. Okay, so all those are the reasons. There's a number of reasons that you can vote absentee. And there's even two types of emergency absentee voting with different procedures for each. One of those is if the voter becomes ill or incapacitated on or before the 7th day preceding the election day. If, sometimes voters become hospitalized on or after the 14th day preceding the election, but they're still in the hospital and the condition has made them unable to request an absentee ballot earlier than the 7th day before the election. It's called emergency absentee voting. If you're bereaved by the death of a spouse, child, or parent, or other comparably incapacitating emergency found by the general registrar to justify providing an emergency ballot application. Let's see. I thought this was really interesting. So if the voter plans change after noon on Saturday, meaning you cannot vote in person absentee, you can actually reach out to an election officer. Let's say you have required emergency travel for business or for hospitalization or death in the immediate family, as defined under Code Section 24.2705.1. You can actually qualify for something, again, that's called an emergency absentee voting. So really, there is no reason that we cannot vote. There are plenty of reasons we can vote absentee. Again, Tuesday, October the 30th is the last day you can request an absentee ballot be mailed to you. And Saturday, November the 3rd is the deadline to vote an absentee ballot in person. So there's that. I'm looking at some of the questions that you all might have. What about voters with special needs? So if you are a voter with a special need, and let's say, I know we have a lot of elderly folks as well, what you can do is you can call, you can actually drive up to your regular polling location, and the election officials there are trained. They can see that you're there, and they will actually bring the voting equipment to you. They have a portable voting equipment. They bring it out to your car. It's called curbside voting, and it allows it's called curbside voting, and it's still available for those who wish to use it. And It's available for people ages 65 and older or any person with a physical disability. The voter shall be afforded every opportunity to vote in a private and independent fashion, but voting equipment must remain in the view, obviously, of the election officials. And it says, will I be able to get into the polling place on my own? I have some friends who are in wheelchairs, and that's the big question when they go to different places. Am I able, and when I get to the polling location, am I going to be able to actually vote? And the answer is yes, because federal and state laws mandate that all polling places, including all locations for in-person absentee voting, they must be fully accessible to elderly voters and voters with disabilities. And in fact, state law actually requires curbside voting be available at all these locations for voters age 65 or over or with physical disabilities. So voters with continuing disabilities may apply annually to vote absentee ballots for all elections given within a given year using the annual absentee ballot application. And I will also tell you that the voting equipment in your polling place is going to be accessible to you. There's state law and federal law. The federal law is called the Help America Vote Act, and that requires every polling location in Virginia to be equipped with at least one accessible voting system that will allow all voters with a disability to vote the same private and independent manner as a voter without a disability. So, the question is that I understand that with the changes in election services, I should not need assistance from anyone, but can I still have assistance if I wish to? Well, the answer is yes. If you feel like you need assistance in voting, yes, you can. And if any voter who requires assistance in voting due to a physical disability or inability to read or write can receive assistance if they request it, any of the officers of elections can advise you of your rights in that area. And are people with cognitive disabilities allowed to register and vote? Yes, a registered voter with cognitive disabilities can be eligible to vote if they are not adjudicated mentally incapacitated by a court of law. Now, that's a lot of information that we've just departed on you there, but I think it's important to give you all the opportunity and the information that you're going to need for Election Day. And so let's just talk about election night results. Once again, you can go to the Virginia Department of Elections website. You can actually watch the election results as they're coming in. Of course, I know all the major networks will be carrying election night results. It's going to be an exciting night, and I know there's a lot of engagement out there, which is exciting to see. A lot of races in Virginia that people are going to be watching, and I know you will be as well. At least I hope you will. It's very important to exercise your right to vote, and I hope you will take advantage of that. We've only got a few more minutes. Whenever we come back, I'm going to switch topics on you. I am going to talk a little bit about taxes because I know many of you are interested in about that. I'm getting those questions as I'm out in the community. So when we come back, we'll briefly talk about that. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. All right, welcome back to the final segment of Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase. I also sit on the committee called Privileges and Elections, and so I just want to do everything I can to get the word out there for those of you who cannot make it out to the polling locations on Election Day, those different opportunities. So make sure that you registered to vote absentee by Tuesday if you're not going to be able to vote in person. The last topic that I'm going to have time for today concerns Virginia's Finance Secretary, Aubrey Lane, spoke to the Senate Finance Committee yesterday. Secretary Aubrey Lane is a certified public accountant. He was appointed by Governor Northam, And I actually worked with him when he was the Secretary of Transportation. But there are significant changes in the new federal tax law. And the Virginia General Assembly, when we go back into session, we are going to have to determine whether to go ahead and conform the state laws to the new federal tax law. Typically, we do that. I mean, that's typically what happens. But according to Virginia's Finance Secretary, Aubrey Lane, he says that Virginia could lose $370 million in income tax revenue if the state allows taxpayers to treat deductions differently on their state and federal tax returns. And taxpayers would have to complete new tax reforms reflecting 20 adjustments for individuals and 30 for businesses if the state does not conform to policy changes in the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So the concern here is that it's going to be more complicated if we don't conform it. It's likely to dominate the budget debates that we're going to see coming up in the 2019 General Assembly session. Governor Northam has estimated that there would be a $594 million windfall to Virginia from the federal law. The federal law encourages taxpayers to actually take the doubled federal standard deductions instead of itemizing deductions on the tax returns. Usually, as I said, Virginia conforms its tax code to the federal policy. If Virginia continues to conform its tax code to the federal tax policy, state taxpayers would have to use the much lower standard deduction on their state returns if they use the standard deduction on their federal forms. So what are the different versions? Well, House Republicans say conformity would result in middle-income families facing a sizable increase in their state taxes. The Northam administration has said that most Virginia taxpayers earning less than $50,000 a year would benefit from the governor's proposal to refund the full amount of the earned income tax credit to an estimated $600,000 taxpayers with $250 million of the expected windfall. Now, Republicans have called this plan wealth redistribution. The state allows itemized taxpayers to itemize even if they take the federal standard deduction. Secretary Lane has said that nonconformity would reduce tax revenues by $133.5 million and would actually reduce the anticipated windfall by $236.5 million, and the total cost of the state would be $370 million. Now, I'm going to go with the option. Maybe that'll be the discussion we have after the election, is which you all would prefer. You're going to get more money back if you don't conform, but your taxes are going to be super complicated to try to figure out. So we'll have that discussion whenever I come back after the election. I will be celebrating Thanksgiving early with my family, so I won't be here Friday, the Friday before Election Day. So we're going to run this today again next week. I know this is confusing, but it should all be before the Election Day. So you'll get to hear about Election Day preparedness for 2 weeks in a row before you have to vote on Tuesday, November the 6th. So you all should be very, very prepared. And you all have a great week. Don't forget to vote, and don't forget Tuesday is the last day to vote and get your absentee done in time.